Okay, so here we are, episode 2 of Chasing Brushy. I'm Cardigan Kid, and joining me is Jason Cornwell, and we're going to pick up. We kind of introduced the presentation of timeline comparison last episode. We're just going to start at the very beginning, and I'll let Jason talk a little bit about what he's doing and how he's approaching it, and we'll just dig in. Jason, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so once again, thanks for having me on. These are fun, just delving in and kind of picking up where we left off on the last one. Real quick, 30,000 foot overview. This is the book that I'm referencing primarily 90% of the time. Alias Billy the Kid by Sonneshin and Morrison. I wanted to show you guys that I'm pulling my information off of different devices on my phone and on my tablet. So, and I bring that up only because when we get into this, I will reference pages, and the pages might be different on my device versus your edition of the book. And I use the Kindle app is where I got it from. So in this version or this thing here, I had just searched the word knife and it pulled up the word knife. So you can see this red line here. We're quite a ways into that whatever this is, this couple paragraphs on the tablet, whereas that same spot is on the phone. It's up here. Knife is in a different location. And this is talking about the end of it, and the end of it is on here. So my tablet and my phone don't line up 100%. So if I say page 6, it might be page 7 on your device. I'm going to recommend that you buy the book, get the app, go on eBay, go online, whatever. Get that for a couple of reasons. One, to double check my work, and then two, whether you believe the brushy version of things or you don't, at least you can have the information there, because like it or not, he has been intertwined with Billy the Kid legend and lore for the last 3/4 of a century. I don't know if this book gets publication updates, but this is the version that I was using on my device. I'll zoom in here just a little bit so that people can see it. I don't know what all you can see or how it will see. And then also, out of respect for the copyright, I'm very limited on what I am using out of here. I use my own nomenclature, verbiage, words, whatever it might be. I just reference it. So go look at it for yourself. And so that being that, I am very open-minded about this, to the fact that I do leave room that there is possibility that the kid could have escaped July 14th, 1881, or before James Mills emails me July 15th, 1881. And while the kid might have escaped that night, and I'll be open to that, and I don't care. I've got nothing vested in this. If you can change history, fine and dandy. But if you've got something that I don't have on here, feel free to email me here. And so that's my personal email address. If you want to IM me, I will add onto this thing as I get stuff. If you're going to say something about me and the horse that I rode in on, there's no point to email me. I'm the world's worst hobby historian, so I'll just save you the time right then and there. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to get straight right off the bat, that there can be a couple of truths to an event. So if we look at Bowdry's death, we all know the story that Garrett had warned him, hey, stop your cantankerous ways or I'm going to have to put you down. And Stinking Springs happens, talk about putting on the wrong hat, goes out there, he gets shot. And Garrett proclaims that he laid him down. Well, Louis Bozeman says that he laid him down. So it's very possible that Bowdry came out, got shot, walked towards Garrett. Garrett grabbed onto him, and Garrett laid him down. But Louis Bozeman, knowing he couldn't hold the weight, grabbed him from the back. And Garrett might have thought, well, he was holding on to me and I put him down. And Bozeman might have been thinking, well, I carried the brunt of the weight lying him down. And they both might have been right from a different perspective. Same thing with the firearm. Charlie E. said that Bowdry was trying to get off a shot, whereas Charles Rudolph said that the gun was still in the holster. And but at the end of the day, we still have Charlie Bowdry getting shot and dying there at the hands of Garrett. No matter who pulled the trigger, it's going to be attributed at the hands of Garrett. So there can be a couple of different, I guess, points of view on something. But in order to change what had happened, you'd really have to have some strong evidence to say that Charlie wasn't the one that got killed. There is no death photo of Charlie. Why wasn't there a death photo? He was an outlaw that was riding with Billy the Kid. And and so I just wanted to be very clear that I can appreciate and accept that there's different points of view on things. And I can even appreciate and accept that if somebody has proof of something that would line up and show that Brushy really is the kid. But when I've talked to people privately or even publicly, and when I say talk to them, I mean really just engaged online, and I'll ask them a couple of questions and I'll present something. The response oftentimes that I get is, I didn't know that, or I wasn't aware of that. So go online, buy the book Alias, and read through the book a couple of times and start doing your research. And so one thing on Brushy is that I do have to ask is, at what point do you believe? So we've got the newspaper article that says that the kid was shot and killed, and he had tinted his skin and grew a full beard. Now and I'm just, for you guys out there in YouTube land that are watching this and judging me, a couple of things. One, I'm traveling right now, and this coincided with my schedule where I was able to do this. James and I had talked about this, and so James chimes in and James says something. Just listen to what James says and disregard me. When I engage with James or with Josh, I kind of feel like that Michael Bolton clone in Good Will Hunting, because I'm like, I think it was Dick Brewer that got shot at Blazers Mill with that one guy, and James was like, yeah, it was on a Tuesday. He was wearing a blue shirt and had scrambled eggs for breakfast, and I'm just grabbing here. So if James comes out and says something on here, I'm gonna take his side on it as to what he's saying. But I think that the kid was arrested, in the interview where they talked about the silky peach fuzz was 6 months before his death. I don't know when the interview happened. So let's just say January 1st to whatever, the July 14th, July 15th. So you've got 7.5 months to go from silky peach fuzz to a full beard. I'm not a physician, but I don't know what, as specifically a dermatologist, but I don't know what transition that would take. I'd assume that if he had silky peach fuzz, that the mustache would come in first, unless the kid had Hungarian in his background or something like that, and then all of a sudden, like, a beard just appeared. But that's quite a transition. But getting back on point with that newspaper, you've got that account. There might be another similar account out there, but what about the other newspapers that seem to tell the same story? Why is this one newspaper correct? I don't know. If you can let me know, I'd appreciate that. Eyewitness accounts. When we get further down on this, and we probably won't hit everything on this episode, but on the list, there's 36 eyewitnesses. So not only do you have other eyewitnesses that are second, third, fourth, fifth hand that weren't there, if your eyewitnesses that are second, third, fourth, fifth hand that weren't there are accurate, that means that all of the witnesses that were there firsthand are inaccurate. And I just don't see that being the case. And then there's always the argument of, well, you've got to give Brushy a little bit of leeway because he's an old man and his memory may not be the best. Okay, I get that, and I can appreciate that. Even towards the end of his life, I had read 2 different accounts. The details didn't line up exactly how they did with Wyatt Earp when he was giving accounts of the OK Corral. So I get that people's memories do fade with time. But how do we decide that Brushy was accurate here and not accurate there? And then I've also heard the argument of, well, I don't know about his early life, but later on at Lincoln County and thereafter, I think that it was completely accurate, but I can't really attest to the early years. Well, at what point do we attest to the earlier years, or what point do we accept that? So all of that, and I looked through a lot of this quite a bit, shared it on the previous video. So what I did is I put the timelines of Brushy Bill Roberts and William H. Bonney, or I guess in your case, if you believe that Brushy's the kid, that I put the same person in 2 different lives or chronological order. So over here on the left, this is None of this information is mine. It's from various books, letters, Nolan or Bob Bosbell or other podcasts or whatever. So when I talk about Mary Richards, I don't want you to think that I went to Silver City, pulled the school records, got that. I just put this stuff in chronological order. So I'm not proclaiming that I found this. This section right here is pretty much the historical version that we've got of Brushy's life with marriage certificates, draft records, and census information. And then our final area is over here where this is the accepted or supported version of Brushy Bill's life. And then I just go down through year by year comparing what was going on in their lives to get a timeline and what's going on. So 1859, we know the last hour of the last day, Brushy was born in Buffalo Gap, Texas, page 1. And I've heard the argument, and I've even made the argument myself that, well, Buffalo Gap wasn't founded until 1883. How was he born there? That doesn't make sense. And that is a valid argument. I live in the Indianapolis market, and there's a town on the west side of Indy called Avon. Has nothing to do with the makeup. And Avon became incorporated. They're an official town, or there was something with it. They ended up with their own zip code in 98 or 99, 46123, if you want to look it up. So everybody knew it was Avon. There was an Avon Police Department before that, Avon Fire Department, Avon school system. And so I do understand that argument that things can be in place there before it becomes legally a town or a county or a principality or whatever. That's not the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. And anyways, that being that, so 1859, first hour, first day. 1860, we got nothing there. 1861, don't have anything. 1862 becomes a little bit interesting. So Brushy had proclaimed that his dad was a very volatile man. And so he was off to war, his father, that is. His mother had passed away. And so his Aunt Catherine, who we would proclaim that believe the historical version, which would be his mother, but in his version, his Aunt Catherine came and got him from Texas, absconded away with him at the age of 3. And it was very impressive because I don't know if it was a misprint on Sonneshan's part or if this was accurate, but in the book it says that he had changed his name, meaning Brushy, at the age of 3. I don't know what 3-year-old would have that cognitive level. So you're either talking about like a Bobby Fischer type of person or like a Sheldon Cooper fictional world. And anyways, they leave together, Catherine and Brushy, and they moved to Trinidad, New Mexico, and then to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then finally ended up in Silver City. And there's, I don't want to say possibility, but that's not super far-fetched. It's not like they're proclaiming that I was absconded or I was kidnapped or whatever you want to say from Texas, from Buffalo Gap, Texas in 1862. And we went to North Dakota, and then we went to Oregon, and then we went to Florida. These 3 locations are all within about 100, 150 miles of each other. So the timeline and the travel, if you spread it out over a couple of years, I could see that being a possibility. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody had moved a few times, ended up in Silver City, and he stayed there until he was 12 years old. And so we saw that on page 4. So not much going on. We have the Civil War in the United States, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66. Now, on the Brushy side of things, I really don't have anything on the kid side. 1867, there's an interesting thing there. One of them is that Cousin Oliver, not to be confused with Cousin Oliver on the Brady Bunch, but Cousin Oliver Roberts was born, and we can find that on page 75. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, this is the cousin that Brushy later on, around 1909, 1910, 1911, he takes over this guy's identity, allegedly. So this guy was born in 1867, according to Brushy Bill. At one point, Brushy had proclaimed that he had known the James gang and Jesse James for quite some time. Now, I know there's the alleged meeting between those two in Lincoln, but he was proclaiming way before that. There's a video out there that you can go online and watch the video. And I think it's at maybe it's 145 or 45, something like that. While it was going, he begins identifying J. Frank Dalton. He says repeatedly, "That's Jesse James. That's Jesse James. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. That's Jesse James." So whether or not he had proclaimed that he was a member of the James gang or not, he was proclaiming that J. Frank Dalton was in fact Jesse James. And so the timeline that the James gang was active was after the Civil War, 66, right around there, on through 70. I think it was 76 is when the Northfield ambush happened. So they had about 10 years and they really split up, and then obviously up into his death in St. Joe. But Brushy was proclaiming that he knew him. And so that would have to fit in here somewhere. And without even me saying that he had proclaimed that he was a member of the James gang, just the fact that he knew him his whole life. So at what point would they have crossed paths? So I wanted to throw that in there. But going on down through here, born in Buffalo Gap, he's proclaiming in the Stephenville Empire Tribune that he was born January 1st, 67. Now, I know there's not a world of difference the last hour of one day for the first hour of the next day. I do get that a little bit, but we're talking different years now. So we've gone from 1859 to 1867. And so this is where he's proclaiming this. Brushy Bill Roberts, 90 of Heiko, Old Time Indian Scout, recently submitted the following account. And, you know, the funny thing about this, and we had talked about this isn't newspaper journalists tracking this guy down saying, "We want your story." For a man that was supposed to be being incognito, I don't think if I was on the run it's either Billy the Kid or Jesse James. You talk about Old West outlaws, those are the two most common. And probably there's been more profitable movies about Billy the Kid than Jesse James. So I'm guessing that Billy the Kid would be more popular. But I don't know why, if this was the Kid, he would be going around submitting information to newspapers. I would be avoiding them like the plague. But he gives this information, bear in mind, recently submitted. That doesn't mean that means that he walked in or handed over his story to someone. Born the first day, 1867 at Buffalo Gap in Taylor County, Texas. So I know that there's been questions about why is he changing his birth date, and is it because of maybe it was because of what was it, the Social Security. And I don't know. I've not gotten that far. I will get to that point. Not in here. I'll research it on my own to find out. I have been told that somebody had asked about it and they'd not been. The information they got back was that they had never claimed Social Security, but I don't know. So I will go on record to say I'm not confident in the source. So that being that, moving on down to 1868. This is the original headstone of Brushy Bill. The information for these, the start and stop dates were given from his wife. And so that's where we get that information. Then we come down to 1869, born in Buffalo Gap, once again, January 1st, to the Stanford American newspaper. This time it talks about he was the son of O.L. Roberts, who fought under, I don't even know what that's saying, General Ross on the frontier lines during the Civil War. Little Bill was born in Buffalo Gap, Taylor County, Texas, January 1st, 1869. We know Little Bill is the same person as Brushy Bill because it says so right over here. And I will zoom in a little bit so that you guys out there in YouTube land might be able to see that. So this is, once again, I didn't find this, that you can Google this information and you can find these newspaper clippings online. Somebody's been kind enough to post them. And so we come down to 1870, and this is where Billy the Kid meets Jesse Evans, or I guess Brushy the Kid, I don't know. meets Jesse Evans on page 11, 1870 or 1871. And some people argue, well, Silver City, New Mexico didn't exist at that point, but kind of going back to that Buffalo Gap, that Avon, Indiana, want to give a little bit of room there. And for whatever reason, in 1872, Brushy moved in with his family for 2 years in Carlton, Texas. And you can see that on page 4. Walter Noble Burns' book came out in 26. And whenever there's something that impacts the country, it becomes very popular. So like when they found King Tut's tomb, Egyptology and things of Egypt became basic standards in decor and songs and stories and all of that. Well, the book dropped in 26 about the kid. And then in 1927, there was a song that had come out. And in the song, you can YouTube it. And Marty Robbins does a version of it that was done in 59, I think. But there's a version before that came out in 1927. I think it's around the 52-second mark. The singer had proclaimed that Billy had left Silver City, New Mexico, because he had killed his first person at 12 years old. I don't know if Morrison was kind of thinking that might be truth, but he proclaims that I couldn't find anything that said that this was the case. So it does seem that he did his homework on that. And he says, as Brushy tells it, he went to go move in with his family for 2 years. Now, there's a few things I don't understand about that. So in 1862, at 3, I don't know how much your average 3-year-old would remember to know who your family was if you were kidnapped. But bear in mind, he was smart enough to know to change his own name. So you got that cognitive level at that point. So I don't know, one, how he would find out that he had family in Texas, why he would want to go back to them. But according to Brushy, something triggered and he wanted to go back. So he moved in with them for a couple of years. And so what's interesting about that is when you look at everything from the kid's point of view or from Bonnie's point of view. So when we come back up here and compare this, keep in mind, first year, first day, or whatever, last hour, last day, 59. We don't know. The kid was born in 59, but we get that he was born in New York quite a bit. One of the reasons we say that is because these guys that wrote about him, whether it was Lou Wallace or Ash or Garrett, they had to get that information somewhere. Now, I know that Brushy had said that I just told people that back in the day. You never told people too much, or people lied about all the time. Okay, that makes sense. All right, I get that. But then you've got Joe Antrim in 1880 that said in the census that he was from New York. Well, that's kind of, And then William Antrim, who was just the cat's meow when it comes to stepfathers. I mean, that's what every stepfather would strive to be, I would think. And for those out there in YouTube land, I am being very facetious. I think that guy was a piece of work, and I don't mean that in a kind way. But he had stated in a 1950s Bureau of Pension request that they talk about, this is it. And I got this from you, James. It's on here somewhere where the family was from. Here's McCarty right there. So right here, died in New York City. Date not, I don't know what that is. Mentioned maybe?
Not known. He doesn't spell it right. He leaves out the K. But it's date not known.
Well, he gets New York City right. Well, he didn't capitalize York, but you get it. We're not here for a grammar lesson on this. But so I don't know. This guy that did no service to Joe or Henry, I don't know why he would be pulled in to lie about where he thought they were from. So that makes no sense. So you saw it right there. I'm giving it to you firsthand from James Townsend, and I don't know where you got this from. Yeah, you can edit that part out. So birth, there were a lot of friends that had said that he was born in 62. So this is coming from Truesdale or Paco Anaya. And it's interesting, Truesdale was still alive. Chauncey Truesdale was still alive when the 4950. So I don't know why Morrison wouldn't have tried to track him down, or at least my understanding is he was still alive. So I don't know why I think that a childhood best friend, but at the same time, this would have been Silver City. So in Brushy's instance, 3 until 12, or in the kid's instance, I guess he was 13, 14 when he took off out of there. I mean, quite a few years had passed. Would you really remember? But it's interesting. I had saw a good friend of mine from childhood about 2 years ago. Got in touch over Facebook, and he lives in the Charlotte area. And I was going to New York, and I routed my flight to have a layover there for a few hours so we could grab dinner. And it was like I mean, obviously both of us have aged, but it was like picking up where we left off. And even had a little adventure trying to find the restaurant. But I would think that they remember each other. Maybe not, I don't know. But either way, Truesdale had said 62, Paco had said 62. So maybe it was 62, maybe it was 59, maybe it was 38. I don't know, but I'm just going on comparisons. 63, I got nothing, 4, 5, 6. And then I come to 1867 and 1868. Now, this poses a little bit of a problem on the Brushy side of things. Keep in mind, folks, that she absconds with him, goes to Trinidad, Santa Fe, and Silver City, and they end up there, I'm guessing 64, 65. The problem that we've got is when we follow this red line, this is an outline or a city for Indianapolis, Indiana. And on the census records and the registry, they have Catherine McCarty's home in 1867. They have Catherine McCarty's home in 1868. We have William Antrim's home, 1865 through 1868. William Antrim's employer, 1865 through, or however long he worked there, I don't know. And so there was even urban legend and rumor that they had lived in Anderson, Indiana. Now, the county historian has said that he's found no evidence of him living in Anderson, which for those of you unfamiliar with Indianapolis, from where this area is, this is near downtown. If you've been to Indianapolis, this is the circle right here. It'd probably be about 35 miles. And so from the top of 465, which is the highway that goes around the city, to Anderson, it's exit 226. So it's 26 miles. I could see them living there. That would make plausible sense to me. But when the county historian's saying we've got no proof of that, I can't proclaim that there's any proof of that. Now, that's just what I had gotten off of a census, or not a census, I'm sorry, off of a timeline somewhere. So when I was going over this, and I don't remember if this was with you or I think it was with you, where we had talked about the Anderson thing. If there's something in here that someone out there in YouTube land finds that you feel is inaccurate, I'll mark this and I'll share it with anybody. We can come back in a year and go back over the findings that people have submitted. I had given my email address up at the top, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm not that hard. Cornewell, there's an extra E between Corn and Well there. You can track me down. And so I'll update it if you've got something that you feel is inaccurate, but you got to show proof on that. But getting back on point, we've got a little bit of an error here. If they're in the New Mexico area, but yet Indianapolis, the registry, the census has them living in Indy, it would almost seem like they were making their way west. At one point, New York City. We know she meets Antrim in Indianapolis. That's where he's from. And he served for 15 minutes in the, I don't know, 18th or 19th Regiment or something for the Indiana National Guard, or one of the regiments there. And so, yeah, I don't know how Brushy can be in the same place at two different times. And a lot of times when somebody will proclaim something about, I've done the research, or I've done the history, or I know that it's Brushy is the kid because of, well, one of the objections that I've got to that is that, and as we go through this, you're going to see this a lot. We know for a fact that the kid was at one spot at one time, and Brushy is someplace else, sometimes in a different time zone. With this thing with Indianapolis also, it's very interesting to note that not one time in Alias do they mention Indiana. He barely barely goes across the Mississippi River, except to boxing school in Cincinnati that didn't work out too well for him. And I think he would have been 31, 33, something at the time. Brushy would have been, I don't know who starts boxing at that age, but he either had to be very, very good or his competition out west had to be very, very bad. So, anyways, that being that, getting back on track, 69, we know that the family leaves for the Plain States. And then we come down to 70. Now, bear in mind, this is where page 11, Brushy says he meets Jesse Evans in Silver City, New Mexico. However, we've got Antrim and McCarty in Wichita, Kansas. And so we're coming back to two different places at the same time. A year later, she's diagnosed with tuberculosis, and they have to sell up shop and or set up shop or move or whatever. I guess sell the shop, close up shop. There we go. And takes off. And rumor and speculation has they go to Denver. Now, I had put this on here, and I if I remember right, Josh Slatton, shout out to him, was the one that had called this out because there was a couple things indicating Denver, but they weren't confirmed in that. Can you validate that, James?
Yeah, we've never found any record of them in Colorado, but uh, Joe Antrim, Billy's brother, does say in 1930 or 1929 in an interview that he went to Denver or at least Colorado with his father, who was a teamster who drove an express or whatever. And so it's a safe assumption that they spent some time in Colorado, but we've just not found any record of it yet.
To show that the kid himself was there.
Right.
Yeah, so I just want to indicate out there that I had put this on here. Someone had called it out, and I have no problems marking this. Bear in mind, I've got no skin in the game. I get, I did this chart on my own time and, for the love of history and the hobby and stuff. And so if you've got something that contradicts what I found, anybody is more than welcome to reach out to me about that. And so we're coming down
I hate
here.
to tell you, Jason, you're part of a Garrett faction that is actively working to suppress truth in the name of fabricated history. So whether you like it or not,
that's it. Well, if you're going to send me hate mail, please address it. My actual given name is Mel, as in Gibson, Hubner, and so just send everything to that name. I would appreciate that. So keep in mind, following the Brushy line, he moved in with his family in Carrollton, Texas here. And maybe the kid was in Denver, maybe he wasn't. I don't know, but we got two different states. So for sake of argument, let's say that he was not in Denver. So that means that he was still in the Kansas area and he had to go somewhere. So I don't know what that is, but I do know this. He's living with his family in 72. So he'd have been there from 72 to 74. Remember, he met Jesse in 70 or 71. Then he left for Carrollton, Texas when he was 12. So that put him around 72. Well, William and Catherine get married in March of 1873. So you would be proclaiming that your son was kidnapped from a ruffian, and he said, hey, the aunt that kidnapped you is getting married. I need to send you there so that you can stand witness to the marriage. And it's recorded that both Joe and Henry are there at the wedding. And so I don't understand how that would work out. I guess it's a unique family dynamic. But the other thing around this time frame, coming back, and I'm sure that some people maybe, I don't know how this is going to come across. At some point, he's proclaiming that he joined up with the James gang. Now, people are going to say, wait a minute, and I've not heard that, and I've not studied it, and we'll get to that in a second. So this is just kind of rabbit trailing a little bit, but I do need to bring it up because it's been brought up on two separate occasions by Brushy. So just so you're aware, the James gang operated thoroughly for about 10 years. Then there's another source that says 61 to 81. Now, keep in mind, 61 would have been when they started in the Civil War. They wouldn't have really kicked off until 65, 66 after the Civil War. So this article here is from a small mom and pop paper that maybe some of you have heard of, the New York Times, January 10th, 1950. In case you can't read it, I pulled this section out of here. This is it down here. And so a press agent slipped a microphone in front of another member of the troop. So there's a possibility that out there is a recorded situation or a recording of Brushy at the 102nd birthday party of Jesse James, aka J. Frank Dalton. For those that do not know, J. Frank Dalton was a man that proclaimed to be Jesse James. That in 95 there was DNA evidence that was pulled out that said that he wasn't. Now I know that people argue that and say that the way it was pulled, and there was some pushback on that, but regardless, this is saying that there might be a recording out there. This was a man in a deerskin shirt, cowboy hat, and fancy dungarees. He identified himself as 90-year-old Brushy Bill Roberts, one-time member of the James Gang. So it's got to fit in there somewhere, because I've got another article from a San Antonio paper where it says old time bandit meets the, J. Frank Dalton in bed, which would be this gentleman here, who claims to be Jesse James, talked to reporters on his arrival in New York. With him are two of his witnesses. These are people proclaiming that this guy is Jesse James. Now, remember earlier, he would have been about 9, 10, something like that. Or he said he knew him from a young boy. That's Jesse James. Yes, sir. That's Jesse James. That's Jesse James. So Brushy is proclaiming and vouching for this guy that this is Jesse James. So that nobody can twist words, we've got him recorded. Of course, that wasn't really Brushy being recorded. That was Pat Garrett imitating Brushy as Billy in that interview, I'm sure, or that's going to come up. Let me just save you the argument there. With him are two of his witnesses, Brushy Bill Roberts, 90, center, who claims to have been a member of the James Gang, and Colonel James R. Davis, 109. So the biggest thing I'm getting out of this is this dude is 109 years old. The guy, I'd be like a vampire, I think. Anyways, who says he was a U.S. Marshal for the Cherokee Indian Nation. And it goes on. And so people will proclaim that the reporter got everything right but the job function, that this was actually the U.S. Marshal and this was the member of the James Gang. I don't know. You've got two different reporters in two different newspapers that drew the same conclusion. And I don't get how that would be. But regardless, there was some idea that he came from the James Gang. If you've got more proof, feel free to email me. If you've got proof showing otherwise, feel free to email me. That's fine and dandy too. But moving on down to 1874, and we start, you guys are smart out there in YouTube land. I'm sure you started noticing red starts to become a problem here. 1874, Brushy runs away from home to Indian Territory by way of the Chisholm Trail in May. This is page 6. Now, the reason this happened was Brushy was a Bronco buster, according to himself, alleging his own mind, and he was breaking horses, and he and his father had a falling out. The very dangerous rascal that caused Brushy's aunt to run away with him. Anyways, they had a falling out, and Brushy's dad took a beating to him and beat him bad and put him in bed for a little while. And he said that as soon as I was able to, I took off out of there. So I don't even know if, according to his story, he was fully recuperated from his injuries. But in the beginning of May is when he took off from home. And so around this time, Brushy linked up with Belle Starr, page 7. While their lives do overlap a little bit, she wasn't established. And so the problem is that Belle Starr's husband was killed in 1874 of August. Now, Brushy left home in May. So we know that, page 6. So 1874, the husband is killed. Belle Starr did not leave, and she had charges and everything else up against her. She didn't leave the Dallas area, Texas area, until 1879. So I don't know how Brushy was running away to Indian Territory and meeting up with Belle Starr. That once again, we're coming to the problem of, according to Brushy, two different places at the same time. And in this case, Belle Starr didn't even exist in Oklahoma Territory. He would have had to run away to Dallas, where she had kind of a hideout down there with some stolen horses and stuff. If he would have said that he went to Dallas, because there was she did some stuff like with horse races down there. I'm sure gambling. There was some things about prostitution, and then she got arrested. And she I don't know. I've seen a few pictures, but she must have been a looker, a talker, something like that, because she had got a deputy to run away with her, and they get up into Oklahoma somewhere, and then he's like, oh, you know what? I need to go back to Dallas. This doesn't make sense whatsoever. And so, yeah, the timeline doesn't line up at all. And so I've not read that book. I didn't even know the book existed until right now. This was just research online where I was going through finding things. So I know that her husband was killed. And for those that don't know where Paris, Texas is, it is near the Oklahoma border. And so he got shot by a deputy. Might have been, I think it was a deputy and not a U.S. Marshal, but I think a deputy shot him, and there was a reward on his head, and she refused to identify the body so that a claim couldn't be paid out. And so that's a lady with some bitterness there in her heart. And so,
something else neat. I don't know if you have come across in your research, but you know who DeWitt Travis was?
Yes.
He was a friend of Brushy's. Well,
Yes.
he wrote William Morrison a letter in 1951. Morrison was still putting together stuff for this book, and the book didn't come out till 1955. But he's bragging to Morrison about how well he knew Brushy, and he was Brushy's best friend and all that. And he says in this letter, Bill ran away from home when he was about 14 years old and knew where he was going when he joined Belle Starr in Oklahoma. Listen to this. She darkened his skin and called him William Bonney to hide him from his real dad. He was about 17 when he was in New Mexico. Belle Starr even visited him out there, which was unknown to the public, of course. So I think it's funny that DeWitt Travis, who knew Brushy so well, even later in the letter, he says, I will still say I know more about Brushy Bill than any living person. And he says that he got the name Bonnie from Belle Starr when he went and had Belle darken his skin and to hide him from his, abusive father. So that's a little more context to the Belle Starr connection.
Yeah, it's funny, the gaps that are in this book too, James. I know that we've talked about this, but so they meet, Morrison and Brushy meet in 49, and there's the whole thing in the book where the Heinz thing and North Dakota and Florida and whatever. And then I've also heard through Dr. Cooper, one of her videos, that Brushy actually walked into Morrison's office in St. Louis. And so whatever, the truth is there. So they allegedly meet in 49. Brushy passes around Christmas of 50. The book comes out in 55. So they would have had 5 or 6 years to really do their homework and lay out their best argument.
Right.
And for quite the researcher that Morrison allegedly was, and I get he didn't have the internet back then. I do get that. But there's a lot of holes in this story that just don't make sense. And so I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if Brushy duped him or he duped Brushy, or they played off of each other, or what. But yeah, Brushy running away to Belle Starr, she wasn't even there. So who'd he run to? So
right.
The other issue that we've got with that is in May, bear in mind, this is page 6. I'm not making this up. This is coming from page 6. He runs away from home, and he goes through Briarwood or Briartown, something like that, Oklahoma. And we come into another problem. So this is the Chisholm Trail. And let's see if I can bring it up a little bit there. So for our viewers at home, this would be Indian Nation, Indian Territory, whatever, the different tribes through there. And as he, and I had to put this in here because I'm not an equestrian guide, so I don't know. The average horse can go 25 to 40 miles in a day. An endurance horse can go up to 100 miles a day for 3 days. My other question was, well, if an endurance horse goes 100 miles for 3 days, after 3 days you have 300 miles. How long does it take for that horse to recuperate? So I Googled that. It's a month, or thereabouts. So the issue I've got with this, page 4, they're in Carrollton, Texas. Page 6, he leaves via the Chisholm Trail. Page 6 stops off in Briartown. And where we get the real problem here is that he goes from Dallas here up to Briartown, Silver City. Why do I say that was Silver City? The reason I say that is because he is registered in school May 18th, 1874. So the question is, how does he run away from home? And let's give him the 1st of May, go up to Oklahoma, the opposite direction, and make it to school in 17 days when it would have taken somebody 22 days to do that same route. How is that possible? And I'll give you 2 guesses, but you're only going to need one. And so once again, we come back to, these are Brushy's words. Don't hate me. This is what Morrison and Sonneshin put out. These stories don't align unless you're saying that maybe the school board changed his records. So we know that in January 5 of 1874, Henry and Joe go to school. March 28th, school ends. And those boys start doing little things and plays and musicals and stuff there in town. May 18th, school starts again. So Brushy's going back and forth from Carrollton, Texas to Silver City, New Mexico to make it to class and be at home. No wonder his dad put a beating on him. And so, and then September 14th, Mary Richards, new teacher who had an English accent that the kid fell in love with, comments that both she and he are ambidextrous, and they form a little bondship because of that. And then a huge catalyst in the kid's life with his mom passing in September.
I think there's some definite red flag contradictions there in that section. The distance he would have had to traveled, the Belle Starr not being where he said she was. It's just absurd. And another letter from DeWitt Travis to Morrison the same year, 1951. The logic of this, he says, Brushy Bill ran away from home when he was about 14 years of age. His family was living on the Leon River in Hamilton County at the time. His mother thought he had drowned in the Leon River. Bill went directly to the camp of Belle Starr in Oklahoma. There she stained his skin and dressed him as a Cherokee Indian and gave him his name as William Bonney from Brooklyn. Why would you stain somebody's skin so that they would look like an Indian and then give them an Irish name and say they're from Brooklyn? She did that so that his father, Two Gun Roberts, could not find a trace of him through the, quote, outlaw grapevine.
Huh. The original internet, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I don't know. These people, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't. I don't know. Next time, it gets quite a bit worse. So I'll let you know with the red ink throughout here. And so stay tuned. And yeah, we can pick up.
We're entering the Dark Empire Strikes Back phase of the timeline.
Yeah, it's getting a little unique here. And I guess that Brushy is well, I guess maybe he does find out who his father is. I don't know. If you come across something that I missed in this time frame, or you think that I should have added, We can go back and revisit it, or do like an editor's note at some point, and I'll add it in here. I've got no issues with that. I'll give you a little credit who brought that up. Like I said, I'm just a hobby historian. Nothing really with this, other than just taking the information that others have collected, published, produced, worked on, and I put it side by side in chronological order to the best of my ability, and to compare stories. So I would have figured that these guys would have overlapped significantly in their lives. So far, I've only seen 3 areas where they overlap. And I'm being very merciful with one of those 3. So if you really got down to it and pressed, it would only be 2. And in fact, when he went to back to see his mom, the way it reads, it seems like he got the year wrong, like it was 75 instead of 74. But there's some issues with the way the book is written, so I got to give a little bit of mercy there on that. And so, yeah, so we can pick up next time.
Awesome. Well, we're all hobby historians. We're just, we go for this, and we're just researching the things that we, oddly enough, for whatever reason, love. And we get a flack from a lot of our wives about it. So, but yeah, this is all in trying to figure out what's going on, and we do the best we can, and we learn as we go. And I think deep dive part 2 is going to be interesting. So we'll convene and do that, and keep the series going. So another Chasing Brushy is in the books.
1 down, 9 more to go.
Yes, exactly.
Then, well, thank you for the time and the invite, and putting this on and doing this. And there's a lot of work that goes in behind this stuff that everybody isn't aware of. So thank you for all of that you do. And I'll just do a little plug real quickly. I get nothing out of this. I'm just a basic member. I listen to your guys' videos and the people you have on there driving to and from work. It's about 30 minutes to my office. I get a lot out of this stuff, and so I really appreciate it as somebody that loves the Old West. So
good deal, man.
I hope that everybody else will join up, or at least tune in and listen to it and support it.
Awesome, man. Well, have a good night, and enjoy your trip.
All right, then. I'll see you, James.
See you.